far, there's no sign that either party, either side, is going to change its opinion on that. The IRA say no to the photographs, and Ian Paisley and his party say no to an agreement without it.
Well, Dennis, then what prospect, in your view, of securing a deal this side of Christmas?
The prospects are very good. As I say, that we haven't been this close before, but this process has always been a roller coaster. And really, I've nearly stopped predicting this process, because really the only predictable thing about it is that it's unpredictable. Should Ian Paisley say, OK, we don't need the photographs, you've got a deal. Should the IRA say, OK, we'll give you a couple of Polaroids, then you've got a deal. I have to say, at this stage, though the parties are very close together, the odds would have to be against that being resolved in time. Should it happen, you'd have IRA decommissioning completed by Christmas, the Assembly back in shadow form in January, and with its powers restored by March. But as we sit tonight, the odds are slightly against.
OK, Dennis, thanks very much. Police investigating the murder of a bank manager who was shot dead on his doorstep a week ago have been stopping drivers passing through the town where he was killed. 30-year-old Alistair Wilson was shot dead while putting his 2 children to bed at his home in Nairn near Inverness. Officers are still trying to establish a motive for the murder. England's cricket tour of Zimbabwe has come to an end with another comprehensive victory against the hosts. England won the series of one-day internationals 4-0, but the row over whether England should have taken part in the series at all completely overshadowed the action on the pitch. Our sports correspondent Adam Parsons reports from Zimbabwe.
England's players emerging for the final time here in Zimbabwe. As expected, this was another easy victory for them, thrashing the hosts for the 4th time in 4 games. And it was Michael Vaughan who led the way, a captain who hasn't enjoyed the political undertones of this series.
Leading into a tour, and any cricket tour, that's what we do. We play cricket and we answer questions about cricket. And when I and some of the players have to answer questions other than cricket, you realise that it's not a normal cricket tour.
But these games did pass off with little disturbance except cheering fans. The head of Zimbabwe cricket feels England's fears about coming here were unfounded.
There's been no disruptions whatsoever, as some people have mischievously tried to put to us. The important thing that we've always been saying is that Zimbabwe is safe and secure for people to come and play cricket, and I think the English team has found that to be the case.
But in Zimbabwe, opponents of this tour are resolute. They claim President Mugabe is using cricket for propaganda.
There is a crisis in this country, and that this crisis is about bad governance, is about tyranny, is about oppression, is about a government that does not care a hoot about the welfare and the well-being of its own people. Cricket is just being used as an example, as an excuse for engaging and hoodwinking the international community.
For England, this is a series that ended with trophies and forced smiles. Very few of their players ever really wanted to come here. So this controversial tour comes to an end with England winning yet another match. But after the post-match celebrations, their thoughts will be on one thing, and that is to leave Zimbabwe and all its troubles behind. Adam Parsons, BBC News, Bulawayo.
Now with news of today's rugby and all the rest of the day's sport, here's Hazel.
Thanks, Fiona. Hello. In rugby union, the reigning European champions Wasps were beaten by Leicester Tigers in a quite thrilling Heineken Cup pool match at the Causeway Stadium. With just 5 minutes to go, the sides were level, but as Ollie Foster reports, the Tigers kicked their way to victory by 37 points to 31.
Boys in the studio said the 2-minute tennis.
There's no love lost between these two sides and very little to separate them. A resurgent Leicester ran Wasps ragged in the first half. A try inside the first 2 minutes from Lewis Moody kick-started the match of the tournament so far. A bruising classic of club pride and the occasional clashing ego, but also brimming with so much talent that there was always more to savour. 2 more tries from the Tigers, Jordan Murphy in one corner, Martin Corrie in the other. Wasps' powers of recovery stretched to the maximum, but they did claw their way back into the game. Only 1 try from Josh Lucy, but 26 points from the boot of Mark van Gisbergen. The second half was a penalty shootout as he traded kicks with Andy Good. But the Leicester fly-half's drop goal proved to be decisive. Wasps were screaming for a penalty try in the dying seconds, but by fair means or foul, Leicester held on for the win. Ollie Foster, BBC News.
Just one game in the Premiership this afternoon at Selhurst Park, where Charlton snatched a late win over Crystal Palace. Match of the Day 2 will relive all of the drama on BBC 2 at 10:30 tonight. Meanwhile, the second round of the FA Cup, non-league Hinckley United have earned a replay against Brentford after a goalless draw at their Leicestershire ground. The Londoners had been gifted the chance to take the lead, but the experienced John Salako couldn't take advantage from the penalty spot, and Hinckley held on. And the reward for their efforts is the promise of a third-round date against Luton Town. Meanwhile, the other non-league sides have both struck it lucky in the draw. Exeter City go to Old Trafford to face Manchester United, whilst West London outfit Yeading take on Newcastle. The other top ties include Arsenal against Stoke, Plymouth face Everton, it's Spurs versus Brighton, Premiership leaders Chelsea face League Two leaders Scunthorpe United, Burnley take on Liverpool, Carling Cup semi-finalists Watford meet Fulham, Ipswich play Bolton, and Northampton Town entertain Southampton. In Scotland, Rangers have squandered the chance to return to the top of the Premier League after they were held to a 1-1 draw by Inverness Caledonian Thistle. Callie's modest home support was celebrating as early as the 3rd minute at Pittodrie when Graham Bain found time and space to give his side a surprise lead. That was cancelled out by Dado Perso after 51 minutes, but Rangers simply couldn't find a winner. They're now a point behind Celtic, who beat Hibs yesterday. And in tennis, Spain have won the Davis Cup for the second time, beating the United States in Seville. Cheered on by a record 27,000-strong crowd, including Crown Prince Felipe, Carlos Moya beat Andy Roddick in straight sets to spark a fiesta amongst the fans. It's now 9 years since the Americans have won the biggest team prize in tennis. And that's all the sport tonight. Fiona.
Thanks, Hazel. Let's take a look at the weather now with Darren Bett.
Thanks very much, Fiona. It's a familiar story tonight. We've got some more fog around. This time it's particularly dense through the East Midlands and East Anglia. Visibility is 100 metres or less. The Met Office have issued a severe weather warning, so for the next few hours at least, travelling conditions could be very dangerous indeed. Now, late in the night, the fog may tend to lift that little bit, and the temperatures should lift as well, but at the moment it's pretty cold here. For the rest of the UK, it's that bit milder because we do have more in the way of cloud. Quite drizzly low cloud sitting across the southwest, and some thicker cloud and some rain heading in from off the Atlantic. That's going to work its way through Scotland and Northern Ireland during tomorrow. Looks like it could be very wet over the Highlands tomorrow. Not too much rain though, reaching the eastern side of Scotland, and eventually we should see some late sunshine across the northwest, though it will be very windy here, the winds touching gale force. For England and Wales, that a bit quieter. Expect a lot of cloud around, probably quite grey and murky to begin with in places. What's left of the mist and fog should continue to lift as the breeze picks up, as we see some cloud coming over the top. But we should see a bit of sunshine developing here and there, more particularly through the Midlands, the eastern side of England. But there will be a lot of cloud around thanks to this southwesterly wind. But thanks to the southwesterly wind, it's mild again. Those temperatures 10 to 12 degrees. A change coming in on Tuesday, much more sunshine for Scotland, Northern Ireland and Northern England, but still that drizzly low cloud towards the south. Very quiet weather over the weekend. Not much frost around, not much rain, but again, we've got to watch out for some patchy fog. Fiona, back to you.
Thanks, Darren. And the main news tonight, David Blunkett's former lover, Kimberly Quinn, has offered to give evidence to the inquiry into the alleged fast-tracking of her nanny's visa application. That's the latest. There'll be news throughout the night over on News 24. But from us, good night.
We'll take you to paradise next on BBC One with Leonardo DiCaprio in The Beach.
Here are the headlines.
Today, I know what I want to hear. I don't want any news or any information. Today I'm looking for the sort of song that's gonna take me back.
Every day, thousands of people wake up with different moods. Every day, the BBC's digital radio stations provide something to suit each one of them. What do you feel like hearing?
The Search for Paradise now on BBC One, with strong language, some violent scenes and some scenes of a sexual nature. Leonardo DiCaprio stars in our Sunday night movie, The Beach.
Swamped with revision? Get Bite Size. It breaks gross subjects down into smaller chunks so they're simple to swallow. BBC Bite Size makes revision easier to digest.
48 hours. That's how long we've got to stop a guided missile falling somewhere in London.
Where's the missile coming from?
Robert Morgan, ex-army, a known trafficker in illegal arms under surveillance.
Who's running you? You don't have the time to worry about who dreamt the whole thing up.
Spooks, tomorrow at 9, BBC One.
And Rooney shot! Out of goal! Matthew drives! One last time! Tanning Ray Thompson is moving beautifully. Wonderful stuff by Cat.
Who's going to win the final race of the year? You decide on Sunday. BBC Sports Personality of the Year, including a live vote for the Team of the Year. Sunday at 8 on BBC One.
The latest world news direct from BBC News 24 at the top of the hour. After BBC One looks to the skies again now with Darren Bett.
Hello there. Before we look ahead to early winter, let's take a look back at the autumn. And for England and Wales, it was decidedly average. There were a few notable events. If you can cast your mind back to the beginning of September, we had some very warm weather then. October noted for some gales and some flooding across the southwest in particular. And November, we briefly had some snow and some freezing rain too. But across the UK as a whole, November turned out to be dry and mild, but not a great deal of sunshine. In Northern Ireland, for instance, we had the second mildest November since records began in 1961. Now, at the moment, it's pretty mild across much of the UK, but not everywhere. We do have a few exceptions. We've seen some clearer skies across parts of eastern England, and that's led to some low temperatures. It's also led to some fog. And it's pretty dense fog as well through the East Midlands and East Anglia. Visibility is down to 100 metres or less. So certainly for the next few hours, some dangerous travelling conditions. Away from here, though, there tends to be a lot of cloud around. It's sitting on the hills across the southwest of England, South Wales, pockets of drizzle still, but the thicker cloud and rain and windy weather is coming into the northwest. And through the course of Monday, we'll see a band of rain just edging its way southwards across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Some really very wet weather, I think, over the Highlands. Not too much rain reaching the eastern side of Scotland. And late in the day, we should see some brighter, sunnier skies coming into the northwest with a few showers. It will be windy, though. The winds are touching gale force. Windy too across Northern Ireland, some rain pushing in here through the day. Much of England and Wales should be dry, but probably starting off rather grey and cloudy. What's left of that mist and fog will tend to lift as cloud comes over and the breeze just picks up a little bit. We may see some brighter skies developing here and there through the Midlands, eastern parts of England, a little bit of sunshine, but I think many places will have a lot of cloud and maybe some rain edging into Cumbria and in towards Anglesey late in the day. Now, with a lot of cloud and southwesterly winds, it's pretty mild for the time of year. Temperatures 10 to 12 degrees. But we will start to see some changes on Tuesday because that weak weather front bringing that rain is just sitting in across some southern areas. Not much rain on it because it's been squeezed out by this area of high pressure. But behind that weather front, we've changed the air mass a little bit. And we certainly see more sunshine across Northern Ireland, Scotland and Northern England. As you head further south, we're more likely to hang on to some misty low cloud. One or two pockets of drizzle here and there as well. That weather front then very weak, but starting to buckle back again up towards Northern Ireland and western Scotland. Ahead of it, though, we could see an early frost for eastern Scotland and the northeast of England before that weather front then pushes in that milder air. And it looks like we'll see some more rain for Scotland and possibly for Northern Ireland as well. England and Wales, again, rather grey, I think. Some damp weather towards the southwest, and there could well be some fog, which will be very slow to clear across central and eastern parts of England as well, making it feel probably quite chilly here. And again, some patchy fog across central areas on Thursday, and again, some wet and windy weather for Scotland and for Northern Ireland. Good night.
This is the story of the ultimate gamble.
Samir Badra, a 36-year-old trader, has been missing since last night.
That became the ultimate crime.
Panic in New York tonight. Wall Street went into meltdown.
How one man's actions
talking about a possible link between him and Al-Qaeda
sent shockwaves through the global economy.
Last month, almost 2,700,000 people were out of work
and convinced the world that a new form of terrorism has been born. The Man Who Broke Britain, Thursday at 9 on BBC Two.
The New Radio Times contains full details of forthcoming BBC programmes, together with listings for all major free-to-air and other television channels.
Ding dong, Christmas time is here. In Dibley
It's an amazing world. Documentaries on BBC 4. Everybody needs a place to think.
Dan, come and put this box outside, will you?
We all like to make a good first impression when we have visitors coming. But sometimes we might be preparing for the wrong type of visitor.
Windows, you could be here any time.
Giving easy access and leaving valuables on display turns your home into an open house.
You done the keys?
So even if you're only popping out,
Don't be silly, we're just going shopping.
make sure your visitors are the ones you're hoping for. And don't invite crime into your home.
We're nearly done for Sunday night, so from me, Dean Elliott, and the late team at Television Centre, thanks for being with us tonight. On the way, the latest world news at the top of the hour. You're watching BBC News 24 on BBC One.
Bloodshed in Iraq. 20 Iraqi policemen are shot dead in a targeted attack. The interim leadership of Iraq insists elections will go ahead next month despite worries about insurgent attacks. The Pakistani president admits his forces have lost track of the al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden. A referendum in Hungary on citizenship rights looks to have failed due to low voter turnout. And Oxfam calls for more financial help for poor countries. They say aid budgets have halved in 40 years. Hello, welcome to BBC News with me, Deborah Mackenzie. Iraq's interim government has made clear it's determined to stand firm in the face of a series of attacks on people across the country. 22 Iraqis have been killed in the latest shootings and bombings. But the interim president, Ghazi Al-Yawa, said that the violence would not prevent ministers from going ahead with elections scheduled for early next year.
Blockades approach. The police force is in poor shape. The Interior Ministry says there are currently 135,000 men on the payroll. But 50,000 of them are no longer showing up for work, many because of intimidation. It's estimated that the police force has also lost hundreds of men to militant attacks. The funeral of one of the policemen who died in yesterday's suicide car bombing in Baghdad. With more and more police being killed, the Americans are now preparing to send additional troops here, when they had hoped that the Iraqis would be increasingly capable of taking over the job. But Iraq's government still says the vote mustn't be delayed.
We still have 2 months where we should still consistent and we should keep the schedule according to what it is. That's the 30th of January.
The Iraqi National Guard will be helping provide security for the poll. But the American military has acknowledged that both they and the police need more training. These men are supposed to be America's exit strategy, but it isn't working. And so, more than a year and a half since the end of the war, soldiers who were due to leave are having to stay put, and the Americans are bringing more troops in. And once they're here, of course, no one knows when they'll be able to go home. Caroline Morley, BBC News, Baghdad.
Electoral authorities in Hungary say a referendum on whether citizenship should be offered to ethnic Hungarians living outside the country has almost certainly failed due to low turnout. Supporters of the proposal said it would help rectify an historic injustice by reuniting the Hungarian nation without changing European borders.
Referendum day in Hungary, and the public is sharply divided by the choices on offer. Gyurcsány and his Socialist Party initially suggested abstention. In the end, he voted no to offering ethnic Hungarians a passport, arguing that it might trigger an influx from poorer countries like Romania and Serbia and burden the Hungarian budget. Others voted yes to reunite a nation divided by history.
We should have responsibility towards the Hungarian minority across the borders, and this moral stance is above the financial considerations.
In the neighbouring countries, the Hungarians have been watching this vote with some nervousness. They support a yes vote because a Hungarian passport would reinforce a sometimes tenuous link with the motherland.
Here in Serbia they beat us. We are considered second-class citizens. We also face discrimination when it comes to employment and other things, while our brothers in Hungary are unsure whether to help us or not.
In Romania too, where the largest Hungarian community lives, 1.4 million strong, the referendum was watched with hope. Some 5 million Hungarians live outside the country and 10 million inside. Their success or failure in establishing a new relationship is being followed with interest far beyond the borders. Nick Thorpe, BBC News, Budapest.
Pakistan's President General Pervez Musharraf says the trail has gone cold in the hunt for Osama bin Laden. He told the Washington Post newspaper that Pakistani forces were still searching for the al-Qaeda leader in tribal regions bordering Afghanistan. General Musharraf has arrived in Britain for a two-day visit, during which he'll meet Prime Minister Tony Blair.
President Musharraf has proved an important ally to both Britain and the United States in the so-called war on terror. It's a stance he's taken at no little risk to his personal safety, and security for his visit is expected to be tight. He arrives here from Washington, where yesterday he held talks with President Bush in the White House. The subjects of those discussions, the war in Iraq, a search for peace between the Israelis and Palestinians, and the disputed territory of Kashmir, are also expected to figure prominently when he meets Mr. Blair. But President Musharraf will also be taking time to meet leaders of the Pakistani community during a visit to Manchester. That will take place on Tuesday. 1,000 people from many parts of Britain are expected to attend. Richard Wells, BBC News, Manchester.
Dennis Cooks is a Pakistan analyst and former US ambassador, and he joins me live now from Washington. Welcome to BBC News. Mr. Musharraf says that they know that Osama bin Laden is alive, but not his whereabouts. How do you know one without the other?
Well, I think they know the one because he just recently had a tape which was broadcast on Al Jazeera. And I think he perhaps surprised people by being a little franker than most and saying the trail had gone cold, but if it wasn't cold, I think we would have had him by now.
He also admitted, didn't he, that he doesn't have the whole of the border with Afghanistan covered. So no surprise, really, that that's probably where Mr. Osama bin Laden is.
Yeah, covering the whole border, which is a couple of thousand kilometers between Pakistan and Afghanistan, is enormously difficult. And they have been pressing the terrorists in the tribal areas and doing a pretty good job of it, but they can't be everywhere. And I think probably the odds perhaps are that bin Laden is not in the tribal area, but rather in one of the cities in Pakistan. Because if you look at his most recent statement, he's very well aware of what's going on in the world. And that would be very difficult if he were sitting off in some village or on a mountaintop in the tribal areas. But
I was going to ask, do you think the failure to find Osama bin Laden is being played down by Britain and the US now?
Well, I think it's embarrassing, and it would be a great thing in the war on terror if he was found. But he shows how difficult it is and how tough the intelligence task is. and in a way how easy it is for somebody to hide. Pakistan is a nation of 150 million people, and it's not easy sometimes to find someone, even when you have all the resources that we're employing.
Not long ago, sorry, I was going to ask, not long ago, Mr. Musharraf, who seized political power, was shunned by many political leaders in the Western world, and he was an outcast of the Commonwealth. Do you think it's right that Mr. Bush and Mr. Blair seem to be courting him now?
Well, as they say in real estate, location, location, location. And in geopolitics, for Pakistan, it's been location, location, and location. And this happened in the 1980s when Pakistan was a key player in the war against the Russians, the jihad in Afghanistan. And it's happening 20 years later when Pakistan, because of its location, is a key player in the war against terrorism, again in Afghanistan. And so Pakistan has come over to our side, and so they're getting their rewards. They've decided it's in their interest to do so. I think it is. And it's normal that the relationship, natural that the relationship should have improved as much as it has, and that President Bush should welcome Musharraf even on a Saturday, which is something rather rare for him, apparently.
Dennis Cooks in Washington, many thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Some news in brief now, and Ukraine's opposition leader Viktor Yushchenko has called for changes in legislation to safeguard against electoral fraud in the rerun of presidential elections. He urged supporters to continue protests until Parliament passed the measures. Supporters of his rival, Prime Minister Viktor Yanukovych, have also been on the streets protesting. The South African President Thabo Mbeki is in Ivory Coast town of Bouake for talks with rebels. Mr. Mbeki is leading a delegation of international organizations on a peace mission. He was greeted by thousands of people calling for their president, Laurent Gbagbo, to stand down. The Russian President Vladimir Putin is in Turkey on the first visit there by a Russian head of state. Both countries hope to build good relations after decades of the Soviet era. It's expected that security, oil and gas will be top of the agenda during talks. The Prime Minister of France, Jean-Pierre Raffarin, has expressed concern that police at the main airport in Paris lost a bag containing plastic explosives during a bungled exercise to train sniffer dogs. Officers deliberately put the explosives in a passenger's luggage on Friday to see if the dogs would detect them. But officials say the bag was mistakenly loaded onto a flight. French police insist the suitcase is not dangerous.
It was a routine security exercise that went embarrassingly, though not, French police insist, dangerously wrong. 150 grams, or about 5 ounces, of plastic explosives were slipped into a passenger's bag to see whether police dogs would detect it. Someone, though, took his eye off the ball, and a baggage handler unwittingly put the bag on a plane. Police say they don't even know which plane. It could have been any one of about 90 flights that were leaving Charles de Gaulle Airport around that time, some to domestic French destinations, others as far away as the United States, Japan and Brazil. Airlines, airports and police forces around the world have been alerted.
What happens if there's a spark? What happens if somebody finds it and somehow uses it for something else? No, it's terrible.
I think we're living in a very, very difficult time, and we have to assume these things happen and work around them.
Police here insist that the package of explosives is no more harmful than a bar of chocolate. It has no detonator and does not react to movement or shock or even fire. They do, however, concede that somewhere in the world, one of the thousands of passengers who passed through Charles de Gaulle Airport will get a nasty surprise when they open their luggage.
And still ahead, 20 years on, a new generation of Band-Aid stars brings in the cash for Africa. Israel and Egypt have conducted a prisoner exchange in a deal which reflects an easing of tensions between the two countries. Egypt first released an Arab-Israeli businessman who was jailed for spying in 1997. Then the Israelis freed 6 Egyptian students charged earlier this year with plotting to kidnap and kill Israeli soldiers. As part of the deal, Israel will also consider shortening the jail terms of some Palestinian prisoners.
This was the moment Azam passed back into the arms of his country. He returned to Israel after 7 years in an Egyptian prison. Shortly after arriving, he was telephoned by the Israeli Prime Minister. "Welcome home," Ariel Sharon is reported to have said. Cairo, Egypt, 1997. Azam protested his innocence in court. "I'm an innocent man," he said. "I haven't done anything." But the Egyptian authorities found him guilty. An Israeli businessman working in Egypt convicted. Israel always denied that. It had worked for years for his release.